I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery, and I'm here with R.J. Cutler, who directed the documentaries Belushi and Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, and created and produced the docuseries Dear. And one of the interesting things about having all of these three particular projects all releasing within a year is that they all give us a different specific look into the experiences of artists and the impact that they have. So how does telling stories about an artist affect how you personally appreciate their art?
Well, each one of the opportunities for storytelling in these projects is a whole different journey through the kind of artistic soul of these individual people. 10 characters in Dear, and then ranging from Spike Lee and Lin Miranda to Stevie Wonder, Oprah Winfrey, and not just artists, but folks who have had an impact on culture and society, like Gloria Steinem and Misty Copeland and others. But also then Billie Eilish and John Belushi. But I guess what I want to say is that what is really going on with all of these different projects are great stories about kind of these extraordinary people who care a tremendous amount about what they do, or doing it as well as they possibly can under high stakes circumstances. And that's what I think is common among between all the characters, all the subjects of films that I've made dating back to the War Room.
And one of the interesting things about that stands out to me whenever I think about just the idea of fame generally is, the human brain hasn't really evolved for the situation where you are known and recognized and watched and potentially judged by just thousands or millions or tens of millions of people. And so we see how that both can have a positive impact in terms of Dear, where, you can reach people who you wouldn't necessarily otherwise be able to reach, and it could also, have issues with anxiety and depression and that sort of thing. So, like, what do you come to think about the idea of that kind of fame and influence through making these and other work that you've done, where you've explored, well-known figures?
Well, it's a really interesting and a great question. I mean, you're right that Dear is essentially about the impact that your work and deeds can have upon the world. The fact that as Lin Miranda says, your work is like a pebble in a pond of water. You put it out there, and the ripple effects go on and on and on and on beyond what you ever imagined. And I think it's why throughout Dear, the subjects, you find them so moved by these stories of the people whose lives have been changed by their work. With Billie and John Belushi, the interesting thing is that you're kind of covering the entire history of celebrity culture in America. Because look, John Belushi, Saturday Night Live, launches in 1975. People magazine launched in 1974. There was no celebrity, we didn't have Kardashians. We didn't have some people who are famous for being famous. We didn't have, of course, reality TV. We didn't have, of course, social media. John Belushi lived a very private life. And in fact, one of the great stressors on his that burdened him in his efforts to overcome his drug addiction was that there were so many demands on him from the public, and he kind of couldn't reconcile that. You're very vulnerable as an artist, and the judgment, the demands, the decreasing privacy, had a huge impact on him, and it was at the beginning of this celebrity culture. Billie Eilish, on the other hand, as you see in the film, is managing a constant audience of 75 million people on Instagram. I mean, she is, and she's being judged, and she's being critiqued, and she's being, and she has to manage that. And she's a child, and she leads her followers. There are followers, and she leads them, but she also has to contend with their judgment, and that's heavy, man. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. So you see the range. It's not for me to judge, but it is for me to kind of describe and to show the impact. And you see that both in the story of John Belushi and in the story of Billie Eilish.
And another major difference, especially between the Belushi and the Billie Eilish documentaries, is that Belushi is a story that happened when you're making that film, while Billie Eilish is very much a story that is happening.
Oh yeah.
So like, especially so early in her career when you're making this film, like what's it like to shoot a documentary where you it's kind of the story is telling itself as it goes along. You don't necessarily know the directions it will take, all
Yeah,
that.
it's two completely different approaches. And with John Belushi, you're making an archival film about a life that you know the beginning, middle, and end. John lived this extraordinary life with this extraordinary love story at the center of it, and it's not simple to tell the tale. It's very complicated, and the way we tell it in our aspiration to make it as emotional and truthful and raw and cinematic and powerful as possible, that all of that is it's a big challenge. And because John was so private, there is very little raw material to work with. Fortunately, we had these incredible interviews, the oral history that were collected in the years following his passing. So we had the voices from his life, and we could focus on what was it like for John Belushi to be alive. And we enhanced that with Robert Valley's incredible animation and with Bill Hader's reading of John's letters. So you really got into the heart and soul of the man. And Judy was very forthcoming and honest in her interviews. And so, in a way, it's archival verite. It's meant to be as experiential as possible, but it's built out of archive. Billy is pure cinema verite. I mean, in the great tradition of my mentors, D.A. Pennebaker and Chris Hedges, who directed The War Room, which was the first film I produced, and but dating back before that to the work of the Maisels and so many others, Ricky Leacock, Robert Drew, this kind of cinema verite approach where you're following the story as it unfolds. You're there, you're present with the subject, you're filming, you're seeing as clearly as possible and telling the story as clearly as possible. And they're very different approaches. They're very different disciplines. The way that production and post-production function is completely different in the verite film as opposed to the archival film. There's a whole archival research process in the archival film where there's a whole filming process and with its own principles and approaches in verite. So they're very different. They're equally satisfying and exciting. The goal is at all times is to make it's to make great movies. It's you want people to have a meaningful, powerful, emotional experience, gathering in a movie theater to have it witness a cinematic event. That's that's always the goal. It's just each film, is its own riddle and requires its own approach. I love the verite experience because it's very, you float into people's lives for a year and you film with them and you experience with them. And then you go back to the edit room and you've collected all of this raw material and you certainly have a sense of what it is, but you have to then shape a whole it's an opportunity to create art out of the raw material of their lives. And I love that, and especially with with making a film about someone like Billie Eilish and her family, where I'm simultaneously telling a story about a young artist coming of age and a young woman coming of age, and to explore the resonances between that. And it was very satisfying experience.
And in both cases, you're telling stories, these true stories, and being very truthful with these very intimate experiences that people have with Billie Eilish. Of course, you have access to her in person, and John Belushi, you have access to all of this archival material that is also very personal. How do what's the balance like trying to get the truth and give an honest, truthful, authentic, intimate portrait that is also, respecting this access that you have and trying to, I mean, not necessarily like hold anything back, but like to be respectful of the people who have given you access to them.
I don't, I totally understand the question. I appreciate the question. I don't think there's a tension. I don't think those things are in conflict. Respect for your subject, earning your subject's trust, honoring the fact that it's their story, not mine. It's not for me to manipulate in the way that I want to. It's not for me to say, this is what I want. It matters to me that Billie fill in the blank. It matters to me that she is a success. It doesn't. It matters to me that she wins awards. I couldn't care less. It matters to, I don't care what she does. I want to tell her story. And the same is true of John. So I respect that. I respect who they are. In a verite environment, I always tell my crew, and I told Jenna Rocher and Jay Kim, who were shooting and sound person, when we're there, let's be sensitive and thoughtful. Let's stop shooting 10 minutes before they ask us to, before they say, can't we be done for the day? Last thing I want is for somebody to say, can't we be done for the day? It's their lives. We want them to be happy to see us the next time. So we're thoughtful and we're sensitive and we're real people and we have a relationship, and it's a relationship built on trust, and we always want to honor that. At the same time, it's my film to make out of their story, and that is an agreement that I reach with my subjects first before anything else. We talk about, in the first day I met Billie Eilish, I said, if we're going to do this, I'm going to need to have final cut. And, and it wasn't just Billie, it was Billie and Phineas and her parents and people from her team. And I said, if we're going to do this, I'm going to have final cut. It makes sense. Nobody wants to see a film where the subject has final cut. That's promotional material. And you definitely don't want to see a film where their manager has final cut. You want to see a film where the filmmaker has final cut, because you want to see, you're looking for the truth. So there isn't really, it's the same thing with John Belushi and Judy, and bless their souls. These folks trusted me and gave me their trust, and I honor that and respect it and am grateful for it. But the film is mine to make, and it's liberating. I think you don't have to worry. Billie's got enough to do without having to make a documentary on top of everything else. So I took care of the documentary. She ran everything else, and Judy wasn't in a position to make someone else had to tell the story, and she trusted me and John Batzik and and Diane Becker and Trevor Smith, my producing partners, to tell the story, and she supported us. And none of them see it until we're pretty much done, but all of them see it when we are pretty much done, because I want to know what they think. It matters to me, and if they feel I've been untruthful, I want to know. That was not the case with either of these films. It's rarely the case, to be honest, that somebody says, oh, there's a moment that's untruthful. I have a hard time, I mean, even I made a film about Dick Cheney, a man with whom I think he's a significant figure in American history, and that the film needed to be made. But I can't think of a single thing he and I agree on in terms of our views of world politics. But when I showed it to him, he said, look, it's not the film I would have made, but you're telling the truth. And so there you go. And like that.
And Dear is very different in that it's 10 sort of short films that like short documentaries about an individual artist or figure who has had a strong impact. what's the different kind of challenge trying to encapsulate someone's work and their impact into like a 30-minute, this accessible chunk?
Yeah, it's, it was Deer is like a dream. Deer is like the challenge preceded the solution. The challenge came to me from my friends at Apple TV who said, is there something they had done a promotional piece about people who had written letters about the Apple Watch and how the Apple Watch had changed their lives. And they were like, is there something in this piece is there a show? And I was like, well, there's not a show about people whose lives are changed by the Apple Watch, I don't think. But I wonder if there's a show about people whose lives are changed by other people's work and who express that in letters to the people whose lives who have changed their lives, whose work has changed their lives. And maybe there's something in that. And so we went from there and we designed out. We thought, well, the letter writers they'll read their letters, but they'll also read their letters in a kind of cinematic environment. And so it'll be dreamlike. And the subjects, the icons, if you will, the Lin Mirandas and the Spike Lees and the Stevie Wonders and the Oprah Winfreys and the Misty Copelands, they'll tell their stories and the stories of the work that they created, but they'll also read the letters aloud. And we'll see what that's like. And then we'll cut it all together and see what we have. And what, to our great surprise and delight, what you ended up with was this kind of extremely emotional melding of the doer, the creator, the person who has put their work out into the world, and the person who has received their work. And you realize that's, really, it's why those of us who put art out in the world do it, or put work out in the world. It's what we do. We want to connect. Humans want to connect. They want to connect. And it's true of all humans with our work. If a physician is connecting with a patient, the artist is connecting to the person who responds to the art. That's what matters. There are a lot of people with fame, with money, with power. That stuff doesn't move them to tears. What moves them to tears is knowing that the work they put out into the world affects the lives of other people, changes people's lives, changes the world. That's what matters to them. And that's what you see in Deer.
And what was the process of selecting the icons who you chose in the first season, and you've got more coming up in the second season? What's that process?
You make your dream list and you go after folks, and you find that and you look for balance. So we knew we wanted a filmmaker. Top of my list was Spike Lee. We knew we wanted a theater artist. Top of my list was Lin Miranda. We knew we wanted a great pop musician. Top of my list was Stevie Wonder. We happened to, knew we wanted a cultural giant. Top of the list was Oprah Winfrey. We knew we wanted an activist. We asked Gloria Steinem. So we're and then you build out. Our friends at Apple said, what about Big Bird? Could we do a show with Big Bird? And we were like, well, not really, because he's not alive. But then we figured out a way to do it. And it's great. It's great. And it's darling and it's powerful. And it captures the essence of who Big Bird is. And even Big Bird is there because he wants his work to connect with other people. So the same with Misty Copeland and Ali Reisman and Yara Shahidi and Jane Goodall. They were kind of at the top of the list of each of their various categories. And then we wanted a balance, and you want a balance with all sorts of things. And the same is true for the second season. So you do a lot of dreaming up, and you do a lot of adjusting schedules around so you can accommodate folks. What we tell them is, we'll come anywhere. We just need you for a day. We'll come anywhere on the planet you want to meet us. Anywhere you are, we'll be there. We'll bring our crew. We'll bring our team. You'll sit in the chair and we'll talk to you, and we'll talk about your work. And we've had a really, exciting response rate to the concept.
Well, I want to congratulate you on all three of these projects, and agree with you about the impact of the art and the artist. One of the things I came away from all three of these was those moments where you have Billie Eilish's fans singing back to her, or Spike Lee's fans saying, "This made me want to be a filmmaker. This made me want to be go to college." It's like this sense that what you do, like your humanity, echoes back to you from someone else, and that's kind of what that feeling is like. And I think that's what everyone aspires to, and what art and artists have such a great potential to do in their lives and careers. So I want to thank you for presenting all of that to us, and congratulations on your own art that you continue to do.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your saying all of that. And what a delightful conversation to talk about these things in the context of each other. So thanks so much for the time.